The room is silent, not peaceful tense. A debate tournament hall filled with students, coaches, and judges sits frozen in concentration. Papers rest untouched. Pens hover mid-air. Every word matters here, and everyone knows it. At the center of the room, a black teen stands mid-argument. His posture is steady. His voice is calm, precise, confident. He isn't rushing. He isn't hesitating. He's building his case brick by brick, exactly the way debate is meant to be done. The judges are listening. One of them nods slightly, taking notes. He's winning. Then it happens. A sharp voice cuts through the air. Hold on, no, that's not how this works. The interruption is sudden, uninvited, dismissive. The coach doesn't wait for permission, doesn't raise a hand, doesn't address the judges first. He interrupts the teen directly mid-sentence, correcting him in a tone that isn't instructional, but condescending. The room freezes. The teen stops speaking, words cut off in real time. The judges look up at once. One pen drops to the table. Another judge glances toward the interruption, eyebrows tightening. This wasn't an accident. The interruption wasn't accidental. It was deliberate. The coach continues for a moment longer, explaining loudly, confidently, publicly. Every word feels less like guidance and more like humiliation, like a message meant for the entire room. You don't belong in control here. What he said next ended the entire round. The teen doesn't react right away. He doesn't argue. He doesn't raise his voice. He doesn't look away. He simply looks forward. The camera tightens on his face, focused, unreadable, composed. The noise in the room seems to disappear. Even the coach stops talking. For a single moment, everything hangs in the balance. Anger or restraint, emotion or intelligence, collapse or control. The music cuts. Freeze frame. Text appears slowly across the screen. They underestimated the wrong person. Before this round ever began, he had already learned how to stay calm in rooms that expected him to shrink. He was a high school debater, young, disciplined, and relentlessly prepared. While others practiced out loud, he practiced in silence, refining arguments until they were airtight. He studied cases late into the night, not because he wanted attention, but because he respected the craft. Debate, to him, wasn't about ego. It was about clarity, structure, and truth. Public speaking gave him a voice, but discipline gave him control. He came from a school that didn't always get noticed. No flashy reputation. No assumptions of brilliance attached to its name. What he had instead was focus. A quiet confidence built from preparation, not praise. But debate culture is unforgiving. It's competitive by design, fast, sharp, relentless. And within that space, power matters. Adults hold authority. Coaches carry influence. Their words don't just guide the room, they shape it. What they say, and how they say it, can elevate or diminish a student in seconds. And history shows it hasn't always been fair. Academic spaces have long rewarded some voices while questioning others. Bias doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it shows up as correction, as help, as a raised voice interrupting one speaker while others are allowed to finish uninterrupted. The teen knew this. He'd felt it before, in classrooms, in competitions, in moments where confidence was mistaken for defiance, where composure was misread as arrogance, where he had to prove not just his argument, but his right to make it. Still, he showed up, because he believed preparation was protection, because he trusted the rules, because he believed that if he stayed composed, the truth would speak louder than any interruption. But this round would test more than his case. It would test his restraint, his dignity, his ability to respond, not with emotion, but with intelligence. This wasn't just a debate round. It was a test of dignity. Before the tournament ever began, before the ballots and timers and formalities, his real battle had already been fought quietly, patiently, and mostly unseen. He didn't stumble into debate by accident. He found it the way some people find purpose slowly, through curiosity. At first, it was just an interest in speaking, in explaining ideas clearly. But soon, it became something more. Debate gave structure to his thoughts. It rewarded discipline. It made preparation matter more than volume. And for someone who learned early that the loudest voice in the room wasn't the most respected, that mattered. His journey into debate wasn't glamorous. It was late nights at a desk long after the house went quiet, screens glowing with research articles, notes scribbled and rewritten, arguments built, dismantled, and rebuilt again. He learned how to anticipate counterpoints before they were spoken, how to stay calm when challenged, how to separate emotion from logic, not to suppress feeling, but to guide it. While others practiced delivery, he practiced depth. He didn't just memorize arguments, he understood them. He knew where every claim came from, how each piece of evidence connected, and why his position held up under pressure. He practiced standing still while speaking, controlling his breathing, keeping his tone level even when adrenaline surged. Preparation was his shield. There were teachers who saw it. They noticed his consistency, his discipline, the way he asked thoughtful questions not to impress, but to understand. They encouraged him quietly, often without ceremony. A nod after practice, a comment scribbled in the margin of a flow sheet, a reminder before a tournament. Trust your work. Those moments mattered more than applause. But for every teacher who believed in him, there were others who watched from a distance uncertain, not hostile, just skeptical. They didn't doubt his intelligence. They doubted his confidence. They saw his calm and mistook it for hesitation. They saw his restraint and mistook it for weakness. They saw his composure and wondered if he could handle pressure. He knew his case. They doubted his confidence. It wasn't said directly. It rarely is. It showed up in the way expectations were set lower, in the way feedback focused more on his delivery than his substance, in the way people seemed surprised when he performed well, as if excellence from him required explanation. Even some peers underestimated him, not maliciously but casually. They assumed debate success belonged to those who spoke fastest, loudest, with the most visible swagger. He didn't match that image. He didn't interrupt. He didn't posture. He waited his turn and spoke when it mattered. That difference made people uncomfortable, because confidence that doesn't announce itself often goes unnoticed. Still, he kept preparing. He learned the rules inside and out. He knew what was allowed, what wasn't, and how authority was supposed to function in a round. He trusted the structure of debate because it promised fairness, because it said arguments would be evaluated on merit, not personality. But he also knew reality didn't always follow the rules perfectly. He had watched rounds where speakers were talked over, where interruptions were justified as clarifications, where some voices were given patience while others were rushed. He noticed patterns not loudly, but carefully, and he prepared for that too. He practiced staying composed when challenged unfairly, practiced pausing instead of reacting, practiced responding with clarity rather than emotion, not because he expected disrespect, but because he knew how quickly it could appear. The night before the tournament, he reviewed his case one last time, not nervously, confidently. He knew it was solid. He knew his evidence. He knew his structure. He knew exactly where his argument was strongest and where it was vulnerable. He wasn't walking in hoping to survive. He was walking in ready to compete. But perception doesn't always match preparation. To some, he still looked like a question mark. Someone calm in a space that rewarded aggression. Someone disciplined in a culture that often confused dominance with strength. They didn't see the hours. They didn't see the study. They didn't see the resilience built quietly, without witnesses. They saw a team who didn't perform confidence the way they expected, and that made them doubt. But he didn't need their certainty. He had his own. As tournament morning arrived, he packed his notes neatly, the same way he always did. He dressed simply, He breathed steadily. There was no showmanship in his preparation, just readiness. He walked into the building knowing two things at once. He knew his case, and he knew the room might not know him. That gap between preparation and perception was where the real test would live, not in whether he could argue, but in whether he could remain himself when others tried to define him before he spoke. Because sometimes the hardest part of debate isn't proving your argument. It's proving your confidence doesn't need to look like theirs. And when the round began, when eyes turned toward him, when authority prepared to evaluate more than just his words, he was ready, whether they believed it or not. The debate room feels smaller than it should, not because of its size, but because of the weight inside it. Rows of chairs line the walls, filled with quiet observers, students clutching legal pads, parents sitting stiffly, a few coaches standing with arms crossed. At the front, the judges arrange their papers with practiced efficiency. Timers are checked, pens are uncapped. Everything is orderly, professional, controlled, and yet the air is tight. This is a room where rules matter, but so does perception, where hierarchy is unspoken but unmistakable. Adults sit, students stand, coaches linger at the edges, their presence felt even when they say nothing. The opponent's coach is already there, assertive, confident, comfortable. He positions himself just close enough to the debate space to be seen, but not close enough to be questioned. His posture suggests ownership, like this is familiar ground, like he knows how things usually go here. He scans the room once, then settles his gaze on the teen, watching. The judges begin their routine. They explain the format, the speaking order, the time limits, the rules about interruptions, formal objections, only addressed to the judges, never directly to a speaker. They say it calmly, as if reciting something that never changes. But the teen listens closely, because he knows rules only matter if they're enforced. He stands when it's his turn to speak. The movement is smooth, deliberate, no hesitation. He adjusts his papers, looks toward the judges, and begins. His voice is clear, measured, confident without being loud. He outlines his case step by step, grounding each claim in evidence. He doesn't rush. He doesn't ramble. Every sentence has purpose. His tone is steady enough to invite listening, strong enough to command it. The room begins to settle. One judge leans forward slightly, pen moving across the page. Another nods once, almost imperceptibly. The structure of his argument is sound, logical, hard to dismiss. He's doing exactly what he prepared for. But the coach is watching closely now, not casually, intently. His eyes follow every word, every pause, every breath. He tilts his head slightly, as if waiting for something, an opening, a mistake, a moment to step in. His foot taps once against the floor, slow and deliberate. The tension doesn't announce itself. It hums. The teen continues speaking, transitioning smoothly into his next point. He cites evidence, explains impact, connects ideas with clarity. His confidence grows not outwardly, but internally. He can feel the argument landing. Still, something feels off. He notices it in his peripheral vision, the way the coach shifts closer, the way his posture tightens, the way his mouth opens slightly, then closes again, as if rehearsing words he hasn't spoken yet. Interruptions loom like a shadow. The judges don't seem to notice. Or maybe they do, but they expect professionalism to hold. They trust the structure. They assume the rules will protect the speaker. But power doesn't always wait for permission. The team finishes a sentence, moves into the next, and that's when it happens. The coach leans forward. Not fully yet, just enough. Testing the boundary. The team keeps speaking, eyes forward, voice unchanged. He refuses to acknowledge the movement. He knows better than to let distraction take control. But inside, his awareness sharpens. He's felt this before. That subtle pressure when someone with authority decides they don't like how you're doing something, despite the fact that you're doing it right. That moment, correction feels less like guidance and more like control. The coach watches, waits. The team reaches a key part of his argument, now one that directly challenges the opponent's position. His voice remains calm, but the content is firm. The logic is airtight. That's when the coach's expression changes. His jaw tightens. His patience thins. This isn't going the way he expected. The team senses it immediately, not through words, but through presence. Through the way the room subtly leans toward conflict without anyone naming it yet. The judges are still writing. The audience is listening. And the team is speaking clearly, confidently, exactly as he should. But the pressure is building. The coach straightens fully now, arms uncrossed. Weight shifted forward. This isn't observation anymore. It's anticipation. The interruption is coming, not because the rules allow it, but because power sometimes assumes it can. The team finishes another sentence, pauses briefly to transition, and in that pause, the room holds its breath. Everyone feels it now, even if they can't explain why. The sense that the round is no longer just about arguments, that something else is about to test the space between authority and respect, between who is allowed to speak and who is expected to stop. The teen inhales, steady and prepared. He doesn't know exactly what's about to happen, but he knows this much. He's speaking clearly. He's following the rules. And he's not doing anything wrong. And sometimes that's when pressure shows itself the most. Because confidence, real confidence, has a way of unsettling people who expect silence. And the moment that pressure turns into action, everything will change. It happens in the middle of a sentence, not at a pause, not at a transition, not when he finishes a thought, right in the center of it. Hold on though, that's not how this works. The coach's voice cuts through the room like a blade. Sharp, confident, uninvited. The teen's words stop instantly, sliced in half before they can land. For a split second, his mouth remains open, the end of the sentence suspended in the air, unfinished and suddenly unwelcome. The room freezes. This isn't a question. It isn't a request. It's an interruption, and it carries authority. The coach steps forward just enough to claim the space. His tone is calm on the surface, but there's something underneath it. A tightness, a certainty. The kind that doesn't ask whether it's allowed to speak, because it assumes it is. He begins correcting the teen, not quietly, not respectfully, not to the judges. To him, publicly, condescending words dressed up as clarification spill out quickly, confidently, as if this moment belongs to the coach now, as if the floor has shifted, as if the speaker has become a student being disciplined rather than a competitor being evaluated. The team stands still. He doesn't interrupt back. He doesn't object. He doesn't react. But the humiliation has already begun. Because this correction isn't about accuracy. It's about control. The coach explains what he believes the teen should have said. He speaks over the original argument, reframing it, flattening it, dismissing it entirely. His voice carries the tone of someone who expects agreement, not discussion. This is not instruction. This is dominance. The judges look up sharply now. One's pen stops moving. Another glances between the teen and the coach, uncertain. A third shifts uncomfortably in their chair. The rules were clear. Coaches don't interrupt speakers directly. Everyone knows that, and yet no one stops him. That's the power imbalance. The coach continues, unaware or unconcerned with how exposed the teen now is. Every word lands not just on the argument, but on the person making it. Each correction chips away at the idea that the teen is in control of his own case. The audience feels it. You can see it on their faces. Brows furrow. Shoulders tense. A few people shift in their seats, uncomfortable, but unsure whether they should look away or lean in. Discomfort fills the room like static. Because humiliation, when disguised as discipline, puts everyone in an impossible position. If you object, you risk escalation. If you stay silent, you become complicit. And the teen is standing alone at the center of it. This is how voices get silenced, not by yelling, but by interruption. Not by saying you're wrong, but by saying you don't get to finish. Not by attacking openly, but by reframing authority as correction. It's subtle, and it's effective. The coach finally pauses, satisfied. The silence that follows is heavier than before. All eyes return to the teen. This is the moment humiliation expects its outcome. Anger, embarrassment, loss of composure. The coach waits for it, because that's how power usually wins, by provoking emotion and then punishing it. But the teen doesn't give him that. He stands there, breathing evenly, face composed. His posture hasn't changed. His hands are steady. His eyes remain forward, not defiant, not submissive, present. The interruption was meant to reduce him, to reposition him as someone who needed to be corrected publicly, someone whose authority could be overridden, someone whose confidence was fragile enough to crack under pressure. That was the calculation. But humiliation only works if it's accepted, and this teen hasn't accepted it yet. Still, the damage is supposed to be done. That's the design. Interruptions don't just stop words, they interrupt momentum. They shake confidence. They make the speaker second-guess themselves in real time. They tell the room, this person needs supervision. And when that happens in front of judges, it matters. Because even when no one says it out loud, authority leaves an imprint. The coach's voice lingers. The correction echoes. The doubt creeps in, not necessarily about the argument, but about the speaker's right to make it. This is how humiliation hides behind professionalism. How discipline becomes a mask for dismissal. The teen knows all of this instinctively. He feels the pressure to explain himself, to defend, to react, to show emotion to prove he wasn't shaken. But he doesn't move. He doesn't rush. He doesn't apologize. He doesn't speak yet. And in that pause, something shifts. Because silence, when chosen, becomes control. The coach expected resistance or collapse. He got neither. The judges wait now, pens poised. The audience leans forward. The teen stands in the space the interruption tried to take from him and holds it. This is no longer just about being interrupted. It's about what happens next. Whether authority gets to rewrite the moment, or whether composure does. The room doesn't know it yet, but the interruption didn't end the teen's argument. It exposed the coaches, and in the seconds that follow, before a single word is spoken, the balance of power begins to tilt, because the most dangerous response to humiliation is restraint, and the teen is about to use it. The room goes silent. Not the clean, expectant silence of a structured debate, but the heavy kind. The kind that arrives after something has gone wrong and no one knows who's supposed to speak next. The teen doesn't say a word. He stands exactly where he is, hands still, shoulders level, eyes forward. The argument he was making hangs unfinished in the air, but he doesn't rush to reclaim it. He doesn't scramble to fix the moment. He doesn't apologize for being interrupted. He simply stops. The silence stretches. 1 second. 2. It feels longer. The judges look at him now, not evaluating his case, but his reaction. Pens hover. One judge shifts in their seat, uncertain whether to intervene or wait. Another glances briefly toward the coach, then back at the teen. The audience is holding its breath. Everyone is watching him. This is the moment humiliation expects to break someone. The pause where anger rises to the surface, where frustration spills out, where composure cracks just enough to confirm the doubt that was planted. Inside him, everything is moving. Anger surges first, not loud, but sharp. A flash of injustice. The instinct to speak up, to push back, to say you can't do that. His heart rate spikes. His jaw tightens for a fraction of a second. He feels it, but he doesn't act on it. Because right alongside that anger is something else. Strategy. He remembers the rules, the structure. The fact that this round is being judged, not just on what is said, but on how it's handled. He knows that reacting emotionally would give the interruption exactly what it wanted. Loss of control. Emotion battles restraint inside him. Every instinct wants release, but discipline demands patience. He breathes in slowly through his nose, steadying himself. He lets the wave pass without riding it. This was the moment that would define him. Not the interruption, not the humiliation, but how he chose to respond to it. The silence grows louder. It fills the space between him and the judges, between him and the audience, between him and the coach who now stands waiting, perhaps surprised by the lack of reaction. The coach shifts his weight. This isn't how this is supposed to go. There's no outburst, no defensive explanation, no visible frustration. The teen's calm has introduced uncertainty, and uncertainty unsettles authority more than resistance ever could. The judges wait. They expect the teen to speak. They expect him to react. And when he doesn't, the power dynamic begins to change. Because silence, when chosen intentionally, forces the room to reflect. It makes everyone aware of the interruption without needing to point it out. It exposes the breach without escalating it. The teen understands this instinctively. He's not frozen. He is deliberate. His inner voice is steady now. The anger is cooled into focus. He knows he has options, but only one that preserves his dignity and strengthens his position. He lifts his gaze slightly, not defiantly, but confidently, and looks toward the judges. Not the coach, the judges. That choice matters. It redirects authority back where it belongs. The room notices. The coach notices too. The silence finally reaches a breaking point, but not from pressure. From clarity. The teen takes one more breath. Not rushed. Not dramatic. Measured. In this pause, he has communicated something without words. I know the rules. I know my place, and I know yours. The interruption tried to pull him into chaos. The pause has restored order. Everyone is ready now. Ready for anger. Ready for confrontation. Ready for collapse. But what they are about to get is something else entirely. Because composure under pressure is not weakness. It's control. And in this moment, the teen holds it. The silence has done its work. The room has shifted. And when he finally speaks, it won't be from emotion. It will be from authority. When he finally speaks, his voice is calm. Not careful. Not hesitant. Calm. The kind of calm that doesn't ask for permission. He doesn't turn toward the coach. He doesn't acknowledge the interruption directly. Instead, he looks at the judges, steady, respectful, and begins exactly where authority belongs. Before I continue, he says evenly, I'd like to clarify the structure of my argument under the rules of this round. No accusation. No defensiveness. Just clarity. The room shifts immediately. Judges straighten in their seats. Pens move back into position. The audience senses it too, that something important is happening, and it's not loud. He continues, outlining the rule he's operating under. He cites it precisely, not to challenge anyone's status, but to anchor the moment in fairness. His tone is measured, almost instructional, not to teach, but to remind. This isn't confrontation. It's correction with dignity. Then, seamlessly, he reclaims his argument. He restates his point from the moment it was interrupted, cleanly, confidently, without frustration. The logic is intact. The evidence still holds. The interruption didn't weaken it. If anything, it sharpened it. He explains why his framing was valid, why the correction offered wasn't actually a correction at all, but a misinterpretation. He does it without naming the coach, without assigning motive, without escalating the moment. He lets the facts do the work. This is intelligence in motion. Each sentence builds on the last, steady and composed. He connects the rule to the reasoning to the evidence to the impact. Nothing rushed, nothing emotional. And with every word, the power dynamic continues to shift. The judges are taking notes now, not casually, actively. One judge underlines something. Another nods slowly, eyes never leaving the speaker. A third leans forward, pen moving faster than before. The room is listening again. The coach, for the first time, is silent, not calculating, not observing. Still, his arms are no longer crossed, his posture no longer assertive. He watches, but without the certainty he had moments ago. The interruption that was meant to disrupt has been absorbed and neutralized. The opponent feels it too. You can see it in the way they shift their weight, glance down at their notes, then back up again. Their confidence wavers, not because they're losing the argument, but because they've lost control of the narrative. This isn't about dominance anymore. It's about mastery. The team continues, now fully in command. His voice carries authority not because it's loud, but because it's grounded. He moves through his case with precision, anticipating counter-arguments before they arise, reinforcing the integrity of his position. He hasn't raised his voice. He's raised the level of the debate, and everyone in the room knows it. The interruption was meant to embarrass him. Instead, it exposed the strength of his preparation. He concludes his response by returning the floor to where it belongs, his argument. No lingering commentary, no victory lap, just completion. A full circle. The judges don't interrupt this time. They let him finish. The silence that follows is different now, not tense, not uncomfortable, respectful. The coach doesn't speak again. There's nothing left to correct. The authority he tried to assert has been quietly eclipsed by composure and clarity. The humiliation attempt has dissolved, not because it was challenged emotionally, but because it couldn't survive scrutiny. The opponent exhales, visibly shaken. Not defeated, but unsettled. Because this round has changed shape. It's no longer about who can speak over whom. It's about who can stand firm without raising their voice. The team steps back slightly, signaling he's done. No drama, no triumphal gesture, just quiet confidence. The judges exchange brief glances, professional, measured, knowing. Pens continue to move. The evaluation is happening now, informed not just by arguments, but by conduct. And in that moment, something becomes clear to everyone watching. The interruption didn't end the team's round. His response did. Not with force, not with anger, but with intelligence. Because when ego steps aside and preparation steps forward, authority follows. And the round, whether officially called yet or not, has already been decided. The room doesn't erupt. It settles. After his final words land, there's no rush to speak, no scramble for the next argument. Instead, a quiet murmur ripples through the space, a low collective recognition that something decisive has just occurred. The judges exchange looks. Not surprised ones, but impressed. One of them glances at the timer, then back at their notes, as if realizing the clock has become irrelevant. Another judge leans back slightly, pen resting against the page, eyes still fixed on the team. The posture has changed. The evaluation is no longer theoretical, it's conclusive. Time, one judge says at last, earlier than expected. The word hangs in the air, calm but final. A few audience members shift in their seats. Whispers move quietly from row to row, not gossip, but acknowledgement. The kind that follows a moment of clarity. A few heads nod. Someone exhales audibly, as if a tension they didn't know they were holding has finally been released. The team remains where he is, composed. He doesn't react to the early call. He doesn't search the judges' faces for approval. He doesn't look toward the coach who interrupted him moments ago. He stands steady, hands relaxed at his sides, eyes forward. The coach doesn't meet his gaze. In fact, the coach avoids eye contact entirely. He shifts his weight, looks down briefly, adjusts his stance, anything to avoid acknowledging the reversal that just took place. The authority he assumed earlier has quietly dissolved, replaced by something less comfortable: accountability. The judges begin to gather their papers. Not hurriedly, not awkwardly, deliberately. They are finished. The outcome hasn't been announced, but it doesn't need to be. In rooms like this, decisions are felt before they are spoken. The energy has shifted too completely for there to be doubt. The round is effectively decided. The team finally allows himself a breath. Not a sigh of relief, just a grounding inhale. His shoulders don't drop. His posture doesn't change. There's no visible celebration, no triumph written across his face, only calm. Because this wasn't a win earned through dominance. It was earned through restraint. The audience continues to murmur softly as the room resets. A few people glance at the team with new eyes now, not curiosity, not skepticism, but respect. He doesn't meet their looks, not because he's avoiding them, but because he doesn't need them. He already knows what he did. He stayed composed when provoked. He chose clarity over ego. He trusted his preparation when pressure tried to derail him. That's validation. The judges offer brief nods as they stand, professional but sincere. One of them pauses just a moment longer than necessary, meeting the teen's eyes with something that wasn't there before: recognition. The coach turns away. There's no apology, no explanation. None is needed. The silence speaks for itself. The interruption failed not because it was challenged, but because it couldn't stand up to reason. As the room clears, the team gathers his materials calmly, the same way he prepared them. No shaking hands, no rushing. Every movement deliberate, controlled, dignified. The round is over. Not loudly, not dramatically, but definitively. And as he steps out of the room, there's no need to look back. The moment has already done its work. This wasn't just a debate round. It was a demonstration of what happens when preparation meets pressure, of how dignity holds its ground, of how true authority doesn't interrupt, it listens. The validation didn't come in the form of applause or announcement. It came in the quiet certainty that follows when respect has been earned beyond dispute. And he carries that with him now, not as a victory to flaunt, but as proof of something deeper. That composure is power, and when it's tested, it holds. Long after the round ends, after the chairs scrape softly against the floor and the room empties, what remains isn't the score. It's the lesson. Because what happened here wasn't just about debate. It was about power. Authority, when used well, creates space. It protects fairness. It ensures that every voice is heard according to the same rules. But authority, when misused, does something else entirely. It interrupts. It assumes. It corrects not to clarify, but to control. And the most dangerous part? It often disguises itself as professionalism. Bias doesn't always announce itself with insults or raised voices. Sometimes it shows up as help, as guidance, as a correction delivered publicly, selectively, and without consent. It sounds reasonable on the surface, but underneath it carries a message. You don't get to finish. You don't get to lead. You don't get the same patience. That's how voices are diminished quietly. And that's why moments like this matter. Because they reveal something we don't talk about enough, that the greatest test of character often comes not when you're wrong, but when you're right and still challenged unfairly. In that moment, rage feels justified. It feels earned. But rage gives power away. Composure takes it back. The team didn't respond the way humiliation expects. He didn't collapse. He didn't explode. He didn't beg for validation or demand respect. He didn't fight authority head on. He stood firm inside the rules, and that changed everything. You don't defeat disrespect with rage. You defeat it with clarity. Clarity exposes what intimidation tries to hide. It pulls the conversation back to truth, structure, and fairness. It removes emotion from the equation and leaves only facts that don't care who interrupted whom. And that's why clarity is powerful, because it can't be dismissed as attitude. It can't be punished as defiance. It can't be rewritten as misconduct. Clarity stands. So there's confidence, the real kind. The kind that doesn't need to announce itself. The kind that doesn't rush to prove anything. The kind that remains steady even when pressure rises. Confidence doesn't shout. It stands firm. This is what the teen showed in that room. Not dominance, not arrogance, but grounded certainty. He trusted his preparation. He trusted the rules. He trusted himself. And when the moment came that could have reduced him, he refused, not loudly, not dramatically, but completely. That refusal didn't look like rebellion. It looked like dignity. As the final replay slows, the moment he pauses, the moment he responds, you can see it clearly. The exact second when power shifts. Not because authority is challenged, but because it's matched with composure. The response plays again, softly now, underscored by quiet, inspiring music. The room in the replay feels different, calmer, sharper, honest. The interruption loses its force when viewed through clarity. The response gains weight, because respect isn't demanded. It's demonstrated. The screen begins to fade, and the final words appear simple, steady, unarguable. Respect is earned when you refuse to be diminished, not when you shout back, not when you prove someone wrong emotionally, but when you stand in your truth without shrinking or striking. That's the lesson. That's the power. Fade to black.